Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Nalo, and it's unfortunate that I can't bring you better news after this little break I took from my last video. Basically, Buff has made a really large decision recently to remove everything that basically has anything to do with opening some sort of loot box on their website. So souvenir packages and cases and capsules are all pretty much completely gone, and you can't use Buff to purchase them or sell them anymore. Buff has a really large influence over the entire CS market, so this is definitely a big deal, and it will definitely affect some pricing. So I'd like to talk about that in this video after a word from our sponsor, GamerPay. This video is sponsored by the best CS marketplace out there, GamerPay. GamerPay is my favorite market for a lot of reasons. Firstly, as you can see here, you can easily compare prices on GamerPay to popular low-price marketplaces like Buff. You'll notice that a lot of items on GamerPay are actually significantly cheaper than they are on Buff. When you select an item that you're interested in, GamerPay will give you a full rundown of the seller and how fast they deliver, as well as a very transparent breakdown of what you're actually going to pay for the item. And yeah, that's right, 0% fees if you use the GamerPay wallet. Seriously, GamerPay's fee structure is immaculate, and with GamerPay Elite, the fees are even lower. So if you're a big hater of fees, then GamerPay is definitely the site for you. GamerPay also has a large amount of options for sellers, allowing you to even make your items follow the Buff price of your item, so you can make it a lot more passive, especially if you have a large quantity of items. And if you've ever wanted to check out an item without having to open CS, you're in luck because GamerPay lets you inspect people's shops in 3D. So as the intro has already established, Buff has a huge piece of the CS market completely controlled. Of course, we don't know the exact number, but some estimations have shown that it's around 40 to 60% of like the total market volume that happens is controlled by Buff. So that is an absolutely massive amount of transactions that's happening on Buff. And now you can no longer buy cases or capsules or anything of that nature using Buff, which would effectively mean between 40 and 60% of the available supply of these items is no longer available. Now there is of course a caveat to this because the supply wasn't completely removed from existence, they were just removed from being listed. The supply does still exist, and that's an important place to start my theory of how this is going to affect the market. So one of the main factors here to establish is the demand for cases and capsules and all those kind of things. As we know, the demand is really high. There are record-breaking numbers of case unboxings happening pretty much every single month, so the demand for unboxable items is just super high. Now with this Buff change, it's not like the demand for these items is going to decrease at all. Just because these items get removed from Buff doesn't mean that people want them any less. In fact, it makes them almost more coveted. So we essentially have this gigantic laser of demand that's just eating up every single little bit of supply that it can possibly get its hands on. And now a huge chunk of the supply of these items is no longer available to be purchased until they get relisted on other websites, of course. So we've essentially got this huge vacuum that is no longer being filled. So where will the supply and transactions of these items actually end up going? Steam is the most accessible, and prior to a lot of the third-party Chinese marketplaces existing, many of the Chinese buyers and sellers just use Steam, and they were able to do this using a VPN. So due to its accessibility, it's very likely that Steam will soak up a large portion of this massive change. And then two of the kind of main frontrunners, I would say, for the North American markets are going to be CS Float and GamerPay. These are both very popular third-party marketplaces for North Americans, so I would guess that a lot of the traffic and sale listings for cases and capsules is going to move over to them. Another big one potentially could be Buff Market, just because it's under the same Buff umbrella and that might be more enticing to people. So that's kind of my theory on where the supply will end up flowing to. Now for those of you that are curious, I figured I'd sort of mention the reasoning that Buff is actually doing this, because of course this is a huge cut to Buff's revenue. It definitely doesn't make financial sense for them to do this, so why is Buff removing all of these consumables? Well, the reason for that is thanks to the Chinese government. For a while now, the Chinese government has been sort of cracking down on loot boxes in video games, and Buff seems to be sort of an early adopter of some of the changes that could come in the future. Of course, if these loot boxes are found to be a really harmful thing and are outlawed, then sites that are providing them could have a very lengthy and very annoying and very costly legal battle ahead of them. So for that reason, it does make a lot of sense in the self-interest of Buff to try to avoid that as best as they possibly can. Now there are two important factors to bring up here. The first is that this isn't necessarily going to be a permanent change. When asked if it was going to be a permanent change, they said they basically just didn't know. So I guess there is a possibility in the future that they bring back the loot boxes, but I wouldn't really count on it. The second factor here is that a lot of Buff's traffic still doesn't really fall under that sort of case opening umbrella. A lot of the traffic to Buff is to just buy skins or to buy stickers, and for this foreseeable future that's still going to be totally possible. possible. There isn't much reason for Buff to remove that because none of that really has anything to do with loot boxes besides the fact that they originate from loot boxes. But it's not like you can open up an AK inheritance. There is the factor of trade-ups, of course, but I don't think that's going to be a factor with the sort of proposed court case that could happen. There's a screenshot floating around right now that sort of mentions the removal of all accessories on Buff, but I think this is just kind of a bad translation, and in reality Buff isn't really going to be removing everything, they're just kind of referencing the loot box type things. So how should you respond to all this as an investor? Well, for the time being, even though some things are kind of uncertain, to me this definitely looks like more on the side of a home run. Cases and capsules are still going to have their insane level of demand that's not really getting diminished for any reason. They still have this inherent reason that people want them, and that's not really changing just because of this update. And the circulating supply of these loot boxes has basically just been completely nuked. It's going to take a while for people to relist all of their stuff onto other marketplaces, especially because you can't really bulk list items except if you're using Buff. So it's going to take a lot longer and a lot more motivation from sellers to actually put their items up, meaning that this large void of demand is likely going to vastly outpace the supply that's trickling in. I would maybe consider picking up at least a small consumable investment here, but that's just my interpretation, of course. In this situation, there's still too much unknown, so nothing is really guaranteed. Anyway, guys, there's your rundown and my sort of theory on it. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like on it. It helps me immensely and costs you absolutely nothing. Subscribe to the channel for the best CS2 investment tips anywhere else on YouTube, and of course, be sure to check out my Discord server and my Twitter with the links below. You can come join our great communities over there, and don't forget to check out GamerPay. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Peace.